In Abuja, everyone talked about Amara and Chike like they were a love story from a movie. At parties, they were always side by side, smiling, holding hands, whispering little jokes to each other. Friends would tease them, saying, "You two make marriage look too easy," and the couple would just laugh. On social media, their pictures were pure perfection. Matching outfits, surprise dates, weekend getaways. People admired them, some even envied them. But what no one saw was the quiet space between their smiles when the camera wasn't there. Amara sometimes caught Chike staring off into the distance during dinner, his phone lighting up with messages he'd quickly hide. He had started working late more often, giving excuses that didn't always add up. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that every marriage had ups and downs. Still, she couldn't ignore the strange heaviness in her heart. When friends gushed about how lucky she was, Amara would smile politely, but inside she felt like she was living two lives, the happy one everyone believed in, and the lonely one she kept to herself. She wanted to believe that the man she fell in love with was still the same, that the magic between them wasn't fading. And yet, somewhere deep down, a small voice whispered that something was wrong. She didn't know the truth yet, but she could feel the cracks forming. The perfect couple everyone adored was slowly slipping away, and only she could see it happening. Amara's belly was round and heavy now, just weeks away from meeting her baby. Everyone told her this should be the happiest time of her life, and she tried to believe them. She decorated the nursery in soft yellows and blues, folded tiny clothes over and over, and imagined the sound of a baby's laughter filling the house. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the growing unease in her heart. It started with little things. Chike began coming home late, sometimes smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. When she asked, he would smile and say, "Work was crazy today," or "I had to meet a client." But his eyes wouldn't meet hers. Then she heard a name, Ngozi. It slipped out when Chike was on the phone, his voice softer than usual. Amara didn't know who Ngozi was, but the way he said the name made her stomach tighten. One afternoon, while folding baby blankets, she saw a text flash on Chike's phone. "I can't wait to see you tonight." She froze. The message wasn't signed, but her heart already knew. Still, she said nothing. She told herself the stress of pregnancy was making her paranoid, that maybe she was overthinking. And even if she wasn't, what could she do now? She was 8 months along. The baby needed peace, not fights. At night, she lay beside Chike, listening to his breathing, wondering if he was thinking of someone else. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead she swallowed her pain. Her hand would drift to her stomach, feeling the baby's kicks, and she would whisper, "I'm doing this for you." But deep inside, a quiet storm was building. She knew secrets couldn't stay buried forever. She didn't know when or how, but the truth about Ngozi would one day come crashing into her life, and she feared it would change everything. The rain was falling hard that night, drumming against the windows like 1,000 tiny knocks. Amara sat on the couch, rubbing her swollen belly, when a sharp pain shot through her lower back. She froze, her breath catching. Then another pain came, stronger this time, wrapping around her like a tight band. Her heart raced. It was happening. The baby was coming. She grabbed her phone with shaky hands and dialed Chike. He picked up after a few rings, his voice low, as if he didn't want someone nearby to hear. "Chike," she gasped. "It's time. The contractions, they've started. Please, I need you to come now." There was a pause, long enough for her to hear laughter and clinking glasses in the background. "Amara," he said quickly, I'm busy right now. I'll come as soon as I can." Her eyes widened. "Busy? Chike, I'm in labor. The baby." "I said I'll come later," he cut in, his tone sharp before softening. "Just call a cab or something. I'll meet you there." And then he hung up. Amara sat in silence for a moment, the phone still pressed to her ear even though the line was dead. She didn't know that at that exact moment, Chike was sitting across from Ngozi in a dimly lit upscale restaurant, smiling as if he had no care in the world. Another wave of pain hit her, pulling her back to reality. Her body was trembling, tears mixing with the sweat on her face. This was supposed to be a moment they shared together, the moment they had dreamed about. Instead, she was alone, the sound of the rain outside matching the ache in her chest. She grabbed her hospital bag and took a deep breath. If Chaik wasn't going to be there, then she would face this night on her own. But deep inside, as she slowly made her way to the door, she wondered if she was already starting this new chapter of motherhood without him in her life at all. The rain was still falling when Amara stepped out into the dark street, her hospital bag hanging from one shoulder, her other hand clutching her belly as another contraction ripped through her. The street was almost empty, except for the glowing headlights of a few passing cars. She waved desperately until an old beat-up taxi slowed to a stop. The driver, an elderly man with kind eyes and a white beard, rolled down the window. "Madam, where to?" he asked. But before she could answer, his gaze dropped to her belly and the way she was gripping it. "Ah, you're in labor." Amara nodded, her voice breaking. "Please. National Hospital." "Quick, quick, get in," he said, jumping out to help her into the back seat. She winced as she slid in, trying to breathe through the pain. The man hurried back behind the wheel and introduced himself as Baba Sool. "Don't worry, my daughter. We will reach there fast," he assured her, glancing in the rearview mirror to check on her every few seconds. Another contraction hit, stronger than before, and she let out a low cry. Baba Sool's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Breathe, just breathe. Think of your baby. God will guide us." The taxi swerved through puddles and splashed past other cars. The rain blurred the streetlights, making the city look like it was melting around them. Amara pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her eyes stinging with tears, not just from the pain, but from the emptiness beside her. Chaik should have been there, holding her hand, telling her it would be okay. Instead, she was clinging to the voice of a stranger. As they pulled into the hospital driveway, Baba Sool parked right at the entrance and ran around to open her door. "Go, my daughter. May your child come with joy," he said, his voice warm and sincere. She managed a weak smile through the pain before being rushed inside. In that moment, she realized sometimes family isn't the one you marry. Sometimes it's the kindness of a stranger who shows up when you need them most. The bright hospital lights felt harsh against Amara's tired eyes as she was wheeled into the maternity ward. Her body was aching, contractions coming in waves that left her breathless. In between each one, she tried to collect herself, wiping at her tears before anyone could see. But it was no use. The pain in her heart was louder than the pain in her body. Two nurses hovered around her, adjusting the fore and checking her blood pressure. They exchanged quiet glances, their voices low but not low enough. "Where's her husband?" one whispered, leaning closer to the other. "I haven't seen him," the second replied, shaking her head. "Imagine labor alone. God help her." Amara closed her eyes, pretending she couldn't hear them, but every word sank deep. Another contraction tore through her, and she gripped the edge of the bed, biting her lip to stop from crying out. She didn't want their pity. She didn't want anyone to look at her and see a woman abandoned in her most vulnerable moment. Still, the whispers didn't stop. "If it was my husband, he'd be here running around, holding my hand," one nurse murmured as she adjusted the monitor. Amara's throat tightened. She thought about how this moment should have been. Chaik holding her hand, brushing hair from her face, whispering encouragement. Instead, she was alone, listening to strangers talk about his absence like it was proof of something she already feared. Maybe she didn't matter to him anymore. When another nurse came in to check on her, Amara forced a smile, trying to cover the cracks in her heart. "You're strong," the nurse said softly, patting her arm. But strength didn't feel like a choice right now. It felt like the only option she had left. As another contraction rolled over her, she told herself she had to focus on the baby, on getting through this night, no matter how much her heart was breaking in the background. Somewhere deep inside, she made a silent promise. She might be alone in this room, but her child would never feel the emptiness she was feeling now. Amara was drenched in sweat, her breaths coming in short, desperate bursts. The doctor's voice was firm but encouraging, telling her to push when the next contraction came. Her hands gripped the sides of the bed so tightly her knuckles turned white. The air in the room was thick with urgency. Nurses moving quickly, machines beeping, the rain outside pounding like a drum. She thought the door would swing open any moment and Chaik would rush in, breathless, apologizing, taking her hand. Instead, when the door suddenly burst open, it wasn't Chaik at all. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped inside, dressed in an expensive-looking agbada, rainwater still glistening on the shoulders. His presence seemed to shift the air in the room. The nurses froze for a second, their eyes widening in surprise. "Chief Odnaig," one of them whispered, almost like it wasn't real. Amara's mind spun. She had heard the name before, in whispers from Chaik, in passing mentions from others, but she had never met him. This was Chaik's father, the wealthy, powerful man Chaik barely spoke to. The man they said hadn't been part of Chaik's life for years. Chief Odnaig's eyes softened when they landed on her. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, ignoring the startled nurses. "My dear, I am here now," he said in a deep, steady voice. "You will not go through this alone." Amara blinked, unsure if this was a dream. Her body was racked with another contraction, but the shock of his arrival almost drowned out the pain. She didn't know how he found out she was in labor. She didn't know why he came. All she knew was that in this moment, when the person she needed most wasn't here, a stranger, yet not quite a stranger, was standing beside her like a wall of strength. As the doctor urged her to push again, Chief Odnaig moved to her side and took her trembling hand in his large, warm one. "Breathe, my daughter," he said gently. "You are not alone anymore." For the first time that night, Amara felt a flicker of something she thought she had lost completely: hope. Amara could barely focus between the waves of pain, but Chief Odnaig's steady grip anchored her. The doctor was giving instructions, the nurses moved quickly around the room, yet all she could think about was the strange comfort of this man's presence. Then, in a low voice meant only for her, he said, "I know where Chaik is." Her heart skipped. She looked at him, her lips trembling. "Where?" "With a woman named Ngozi," he said plainly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I have known for weeks. Tonight, I followed my sources and found him in a restaurant with her while you were here, bringing his child into the world." The words hit harder than the contractions. Amara felt something inside her crack open. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed, and at this moment was like being struck by lightning. Tears welled in her eyes, but Chief Odnaig squeezed her hand gently. "Listen to me," he continued, his voice firm and full of quiet authority. "I will not allow my grandchild to enter this world in shame. Chaik has failed you, but I will not. From this moment I stand with you. You are part of my family, and you will be treated with the respect you deserve." Amara swallowed hard, unable to speak. Her chest ached with betrayal, but also with the strange relief of having someone, anyone, on her side. The chief turned to the room, his deep voice carrying over the beeping machines. "No one will say this woman labored alone. I am here as her father, until my son remembers what it means to be a man." The nurses exchanged glances, a few nodding subtly. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Less pity, more protection. Another contraction tore through Amara and she cried out, but this time Chief Odnaig leaned close. "Focus on your baby, my daughter. I will handle everything else." And in that moment, even with the pain and the heartbreak, Amara felt a strange kind of strength rise within her. She wasn't alone anymore. Amara gripped the sides of the bed, her entire body trembling as the doctor urged her to give one last push. Every muscle burned, her lungs screamed for air, and the sound of the rain outside seemed to fade under the pounding of her heartbeat. Then, all at once, she felt the release, and a tiny piercing cry filled the room. Her head fell back against the pillow, tears streaming down her face. She had done it. The baby was here. The nurses quickly wrapped the newborn in a soft white blanket, and the room seemed to glow with warmth despite the storm outside. But instead of handing the baby to her, the nurse turned to Chief Odnaig. "Sir," she asked softly, almost out of respect, The chief stepped forward, his eyes glistening as he took the tiny bundle into his large hands. The contrast was striking, this powerful man holding something so small and fragile. He looked down at the baby, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Shinonso," he said firmly. "That is his name. It means God is near." Amara's lips trembled at the sound of it. The name wrapped around her heart like a blessing. Chief Odnaig bent low, his deep voice turning gentle as he whispered something to the baby only they could hear. Then he turned to Amara and placed the child in her arms. "You have brought light into this world," he told her. "No matter what my son has done, this boy will know love, dignity, and honor. I promise you that." Amara looked down at Shinonso's tiny face, his eyes still closed, his little hands curling and uncurling. In that moment, the pain of labor, the sting of betrayal, the loneliness of the past months, all of it faded into the background. She was a mother now, and beside her stood a man who, though a stranger only hours ago, had shown her more loyalty than the one she had built her life with. As the rain continued to fall outside, Amara held her son close, breathing in his warmth. God was near, and so was hope. It was hours after Shinonso's birth when the door to the hospital room suddenly swung open with a loud bang. Chaik stormed in, his face tight with panic, or maybe guilt. His eyes darted to Amara first, then froze when he saw the tall figure standing beside her bed. "Father!" Chaik's voice cracked in disbelief. Chief Odnaig didn't move. He stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes cold and unblinking. "You finally decided to show your face," he said, his deep voice cutting through the air. Chaik glanced around and seemed to notice for the first time the commotion outside the door. Reporters, camera flashes, murmurs spreading through the corridor. He looked back at his father, confusion and fear mixing on his face. "What is all this? Why are they here?" The chief took a step forward. "They are here because the world should know the kind of man my son has become. While your wife was bringing your child into the world, you were dining with another woman. Shame on you, Chaik." The color drained from Chaik's face. "It's not what you think." "It is exactly what I think," the chief interrupted sharply. "From this moment, you are cut off from the family fortune. Every privilege you enjoyed under my name is gone. You have dishonored this family, but I will not allow you to dishonor my grandson." The room was silent except for the faint sound of Shinonso's soft breaths. Amara held the baby close, her eyes fixed on Chaik. She didn't say a word, she didn't need to. The reporters outside caught every word the chief said, their cameras flashing wildly as whispers spread through the hospital hallways. Chaik stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the right words. Chief Odnaig turned away from him and looked at Amara. "Rest now, my daughter," he said gently. "You and Shinonso are under my protection." For Chaik, the silence in that room was heavier than any shout. For Amara, it was the sound of a door closing, and another one opening. Months had passed since that stormy night in the hospital. The pain of betrayal had not completely faded, but Amara's life looked nothing like it did before. She now lived in a beautiful new home, a gift from Chief Odnaig, with bright rooms filled with sunlight and laughter. Every corner of the house smelled faintly of baby powder and fresh flowers. Her days were busy but full. She had started a small fashion line, something she had always dreamed about but never had the courage to try. The sewing machine hummed late into the evenings as she worked on bold prints and elegant dresses, her designs inspired by resilience and beauty. Each piece carried a little part of her journey, strength stitched into every seam. And always nearby was Shinonso, her little shadow. His giggles filled the house, his tiny hands reaching for her fabric samples as if he wanted to be part of everything she did. Sometimes she would pause her work just to watch him play, her heart swelling with gratitude. He was her greatest creation, her reason to keep going. Chief Odnaig visited often, bringing gifts for Shinonso and encouragement for Amara. "You are building something powerful," he would say. And deep down, she knew he wasn't just talking about the business. Looking around her new life, Amara realized something she never thought she would feel again: peace. The betrayal that once felt like it would break her had instead pushed her toward a life filled with purpose, independence, and love. She had lost a husband, but she had gained freedom. She had been left alone, but she had found unexpected family. And every time she looked at Shenanso, she knew the truth. Sometimes the worst endings lead to the best beginnings.